The crimson silk felt like a shroud tonight. Zainab lay perfectly still in the sprawling bed, listening to the rhythm of her own heartbeat. The only confirmation she was still alive in this gilded mausoleum. The bedroom was designed for emperors, with its floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seoul's diamond-studded skyline. But she had never felt more invisible. For the 1460th night in succession, Min-soo had prepared for sleep without meeting her eyes even once. 4 years, 48 months of marriage, and she could list on her fingers the moments he had reached for her with anything beyond rehearsed courtesy. Not the fire she hungered for, not the connection husband and wife were meant to forge, not even the basic tenderness of his arm around her waist as dawn broke. Zainab drew the sheets higher against her throat and shifted toward the glass overlooking the city's cold brilliance. Their penthouse commanded views that cost more than most people earned in lifetimes. Every corner whispered of wealth beyond imagination. Before we dive in, please subscribe and comment where you are watching from. But even the most exquisite prison was still a prison. Zainab had learned to measure time in the smallest increments here. The click of Min-soo's Patek Philippe watch as he checked it against the nightstand clock. The whisper of expensive fabric as he moved through their bedroom like a shadow passing through moonlight. The careful, deliberate silence that filled the space between them like water filling a drowning woman's lungs. She remembered the first night in this penthouse. 4 years ago, when she'd been naive enough to believe that marriage to Park Min-soo meant she would finally understand the man behind those slate-gray eyes, the man who had courted her with a precision that should have warned her. Flowers delivered at exact intervals, dinners planned down to the minute, a proposal that felt choreographed rather than spontaneous. She'd mistaken his control for devotion. Now she knew better. Control was all Min-soo had to offer. Control over his empire, control over his enemies, control over every breath he took in her presence. What he couldn't control, he avoided. And apparently, she fell into that second category. The bathroom door opened with its familiar, soft click. Zainab didn't turn. She'd learned not to expect anything from these moments. Min-soo emerged in his silk sleeping shirt and tailored pajama trousers, both in shades of charcoal that matched the shadows he seemed to carry with him. His dark hair was still damp from the shower, swept back from his face in that severe style that made his sharp jawline even more pronounced. He was devastatingly beautiful. That had never been the problem. Min-soo moved to his side of the bed with the same measured grace he brought to everything. Not a single movement wasted, not a single glance in her direction. He sat on the edge of the mattress, his back to her, and reached for the cufflinks he'd left on his nightstand. Even now, preparing for sleep, he went through his rituals, removing his watch, checking his phone one final time, setting everything in its precise place. Zainab watched the muscles of his shoulders move beneath the silk, watched him fasten and unfasten those platinum cufflinks as though they were armor he couldn't quite bring himself to remove. She wondered what he was thinking. She always wondered. In 4 years, she'd never been granted access to the fortress of his mind. "You're still awake," he said. His voice was low, carefully neutral, the same tone he used with his subordinates, polite, professional, distant. "I am," she replied, matching his tone because what else could she do? Min-soo's shoulders tensed for the briefest moment. Then he continued his routine, placing the cufflinks in their velvet-lined box with surgical precision. "You should rest. It's late. It's late." As though she were a child who needed reminding of bedtime. As though they weren't married. As though she weren't lying 3 feet away from him in crimson silk pajamas he'd never once acknowledged, never once reached for, never once torn away in a moment of passion or need or simple human desire. "Of course," Zainab heard herself say. "Good night, Min-soo." "Good night, Zainab." He stood then, moving around to his side of the bed. The mattress dipped slightly as he settled in, maintaining what had to be a carefully calculated distance, close enough to share a bed, far enough to never accidentally touch. Zainab closed her eyes and felt the familiar burn behind her eyelids. 4 years of good nights, 4 years of careful distance, 4 years of sleeping next to a man who treated her like a priceless vase he'd been hired to guard but never to hold. The irony wasn't lost on her. She traveled halfway across the world, left everything she knew in Tanzania, embraced a new culture and a new life, all for a marriage that existed only on paper and in public appearances. At charity galas, Min-soo was the attentive husband, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. In business meetings, he introduced her with pride, his wife, his partner, but here, in the darkness of their bedroom, with Seoul's lights glittering like false promises beyond the windows, They were strangers who happened to share a surname and an address. The LED display on the nightstand clock read 1:47 a.m. Minsu's breathing had already fallen into the deep, even rhythm of sleep. He'd always been able to do that, shut down like a machine powering off, regardless of what remained unresolved between them. Zainab kept her eyes on the ceiling, tracking the subtle shifts of light from the city below. Somewhere out there, people were living, loving, fighting, feeling something other than this endless, aching emptiness. She'd been patient, so incredibly patient, waiting for him to open up, waiting for the walls to come down, waiting for any sign that beneath the ice there was warmth meant for her. But patience had only bought her more of the same. More silence, more distance, more nights like this one, counting the minutes until dawn, when he would rise, dress in one of his immaculate suits, and leave for whatever business required the attention of Seoul's most dangerous man. Tomorrow, she decided, pressing her palm flat against her chest where her heart beat its lonely rhythm. Tomorrow, she would stop waiting. Tomorrow, she would start packing. The vibration of Minsu's phone shattered the silence at 1:53 a.m. Zainab felt rather than heard him wake. One moment he was deeply asleep, the next he was reaching for the device with the instant alertness of a predator sensing danger. She kept her breathing steady, her body still, playing the role of the sleeping wife while he read whatever message had summoned him back to his other life. The mattress shifted as he rose. She tracked his movements through barely opened eyes, the closet door sliding open. The whisper of fabric as he selected another suit, this one darker than night itself. The efficient sounds of a man who'd dressed in the dark 1,000 times before. Within 3 minutes, Park Min-soo was transformed back into the untouchable boss of Seoul's underworld, every trace of vulnerability erased. He paused at the bedroom door. Zainab felt his gaze on her back, heavy as a physical touch. For a heartbeat, she thought he might speak, might cross back to the bed, might finally say something real. The door closed with a soft click. His footsteps faded down the hallway. The private elevator chimed. Then there was only silence and the relentless tick of the nightstand clock marking 1:58 a.m. Zainab opened her eyes fully and stared at the empty space beside her, still warm from his body, still carrying the ghost of his presence. How many times had she watched him leave like this? How many urgent meetings? How many emergencies that were always more important than the woman waiting in his bed? She sat up slowly, her crimson silk pajamas catching the city lights filtering through the windows. Her reflection in the darkened television screen showed a woman she barely recognized anymore. When had she become so hollow? When had she stopped fighting for more than polite exchanges and careful distance? The answer settled in her chest like a stone. Tonight. She'd stop tonight. Zainab moved with sudden purpose, crossing to the walk-in closet that was larger than the apartment she'd lived in back in Tanzania. Her fingers found the leather suitcase on the top shelf, the one Min-soo had given her for their first anniversary. "For when we travel together," he'd said. They never had. She laid it open on the bed, the brass latches gleaming like small accusations. Then she began to fill it with the evidence of their marriage. The Cartier bracelet he'd presented to her at last year's charity gala, fastening it around her wrist without meeting her eyes. The limited edition Hermès scarf, still in its box, purchased by his secretary and signed with his name. The diamond earrings for her birthday. The pearl necklace for Christmas. The designer handbag she'd never carried because it felt like wearing someone else's taste, someone else's life. Each item folded carefully into the suitcase felt like a small death. Beautiful, expensive deaths. She moved through the bedroom methodically, gathering the pieces of a marriage that had never truly existed. The silk robe from Paris, the perfume from Dubai, the leather gloves from Milan. All of them gifts that said, "I remember you exist," without ever saying, "I want you." Zainab was reaching for the jewelry box on her vanity when she heard it. The sound that stopped her heart mid-beat. The private elevator, chiming. Her hands froze on the jewelry box. It couldn't be. He'd just left. The meeting was. The penthouse door opened. Footsteps in the hallway. Familiar, deliberate. Coming closer. Zainab turned slowly toward the bedroom door, her pulse suddenly thunderous in her ears. The suitcase lay open on the bed behind her, damning as evidence at a crime scene. There was no time to hide it, no time to close it, no time to pretend this wasn't exactly what it looked like. The bedroom door swung open. Min-soo stood in the doorway, his black suit perfectly pressed, his dark hair immaculate, But his eyes, those slate-gray eyes that never showed anything, were fixed on the suitcase with an intensity that made the air feel thin. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. Then his gaze lifted to hers. And Zainab saw something she'd never seen before in 4 years of marriage. Something that looked almost like fear, buried deep beneath layers of ice. "What?" Minsu said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Are you doing?" The words hung between them like a blade waiting to fall. Zainab's hands trembled against her sides, but she forced herself to stand straighter, to meet those steel-gray eyes without flinching. 4 years of silence had taught her many things, and one of them was how to appear composed even when her world was crumbling. "I'm leaving," she said. The words came out steadier than she'd expected. "That's what I'm doing." Minsu didn't move from the doorway, didn't step closer, didn't step back. He simply stood there like a statue carved from ice and shadows, his gaze moving from her face to the suitcase and back again. When he finally spoke, his voice was so controlled it could have cut glass. "Leaving?" It wasn't a question, it was an indictment. "Yes." Zainab turned back to the vanity, her fingers closing around the jewelry box because she needed something to hold, something to keep her hands from shaking. "I'll be gone by morning. You won't have to pretend anymore." Pretend. The word came out sharp. She heard him move into the room, his footsteps measured and precise even now. "What exactly do you think I've been pretending?" The laugh that escaped her throat was bitter and broken. "Everything, Minsu. You've been pretending everything." She spun to face him, the jewelry box clutched against her chest like armor. "That this marriage means something. That I mean something. That I'm anything more than another expensive acquisition you keep locked away in this penthouse." His jaw tightened. That was the only sign she'd landed a blow. "You don't understand." "No. You're right. I don't understand." The words came faster now, 4 years of silence breaking like a dam. "I don't understand how a man can marry a woman and then refuse to touch her. I don't understand how you can sleep 3 feet away from me every night and act like I'm not even there. I don't understand how you can buy me diamonds and pearls and every beautiful thing in the world except the one thing I actually want." "Zainab, you." Her voice cracked on the word. "I want you, Minsu. Not your money, not your protection, not your careful politeness. You." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or fear. It was gone before she could name it. "This isn't..." He stopped. Started again. "You're safer if we maintain distance." "Safer?" The jewelry box fell from her hands, scattering across the carpet. "Safer from what? From you? Is that what you think? That I'm terrified of the big dangerous Mafia boss?" She took a step toward him, then another. "I crossed an ocean for you. I left everything I knew. I learned your language, your culture, your world. And you think I need to be kept safe from you?" Minsu's hands flexed at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me." The words exploded out of her. "Tell me why you look at me like I'm something precious and then turn away. Tell me why you married me if you never wanted a wife. Tell me why I spend every night in this prison wondering what I did wrong, what I'm lacking, why I'm not enough." "You are enough." The words cut through her spiral like a knife. Minsu's composure cracked, his voice raw. "You've always been enough. That's the problem." Zainab froze. "What?" But he was already retreating, the walls slamming back into place. "Pack your things. I'll arrange for a transfer of funds. You'll never want for anything." "I don't want your money." She closed the distance between them in 3 strides, her hand catching his wrist. He went rigid at the contact, every muscle locked. "I want the truth. For once in 4 years, I want you to tell me the truth. The truth won't change anything. Then it won't matter if you tell me." They stood there, her fingers wrapped around his wrist, his pulse hammering against her palm, close enough that she could see the barely controlled tension in his shoulders, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne mixed with something darker, something desperate. "I'm done being your fragile porcelain doll, Minsu." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm done being something you keep on a shelf and admire from a distance. Either be my husband or let me go. But stop pretending you're doing me a favor by keeping me at arm's length." His free hand lifted, hovering near her face. For one breathless moment, she thought he might touch her, might finally close the distance that had defined their entire marriage. Instead, his hand fell back to his side. "You should finish packing," he said quietly. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." He pulled his wrist from her grip and walked toward the door, and something inside Zainab shattered completely. "No." The word left her mouth before she could think. before she could stop herself, before 4 years of compliance and patience could silence her one more time. Minsu paused in the doorway, his spine rigid. "No," Zainab repeated, louder now. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to walk away from me again." "Zainab," she lunged for him. Not gracefully, not with any plan, just desperate momentum driven by 4 years of starvation. Her hand caught his arm, pulling him back, and he turned with a speed that reminded her exactly what he was. Dangerous, lethal, a man who'd built an empire on violence. But she didn't care anymore. "Tell me why." Her voice broke on the demand. "Tell me what I did to make you hate me so much." "I don't hate you." His composure splintered. He grabbed her wrists, not roughly but firmly enough to stop her forward motion. "God, Zainab, I don't—" They struggled in the strange, graceless way of two people who'd never touched with anything but careful politeness. Not fighting, exactly. Wrestling for something neither could name. Minsu trying to create distance. Zainab refusing to let him retreat. Her shoulder collided with his chest. His hip caught the edge of the nightstand. The lacquered drawer jerked open with a crack. They both froze. Papers fluttered to the carpet like dying birds. Photographs scattered across the floor in a glossy cascade, and something leather-bound tumbled out, landing open at Zainab's feet. Minsu's face went absolutely white. "Don't." He released her wrists, dropping to his knees to gather the fallen items. But Zainab was faster. She snatched up the nearest photograph, her hands shaking. It was her. Asleep in this very bed, morning light gilding her face. The angle was close, intimate, taken by someone standing right beside her. She grabbed another. Her laughing at something on her phone, curled up in the reading chair by the window. Another, her back to the camera, silhouetted against the Seoul skyline, wearing nothing but one of Minsu's shirts she'd borrowed once and never returned. "What is this?" Her voice came out strangled. Minsu remained kneeling, photographs clutched in his trembling hands. He wouldn't look at her. Couldn't. Zainab's gaze fell to the leather journal lying open on the floor. Her name jumped out at her from the page, written in Minsu's precise handwriting. She bent down, picking it up with numb fingers. Day 847. She wore yellow today. I didn't tell her it's my favorite color. I didn't tell her she looks like sunlight when she smiles. I didn't tell her anything, because telling her would mean admitting the truth, that I watch her constantly, that I memorize every expression, that I know she takes her coffee with too much cream and reads the same book 3 times when she's anxious, that I'm completely, catastrophically in love with her, and that love will kill her. The words blurred. Zainab flipped back through pages, her heart hammering against her ribs. Day 623. Found her crying in the bathroom tonight. Didn't go to her. Couldn't. If I touch her, I won't stop. If I hold her, I'll never let go. And they're watching. Always watching, waiting for me to show weakness, waiting to find the one thing they can use to destroy me. Further back, day 301. She asked me today if I was happy. I said yes. I lied. Happiness is watching her exist in my world and knowing I can never truly have her. Knowing that keeping her means keeping her at a distance. Every night I sleep 3 feet away from her is another night she stays alive. The first entry, day 1. Married Zainab Juma today. Most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Most dangerous decision I've ever made. I thought I could control this. Thought I could keep her safe by keeping her separate from my heart. I was wrong. I loved her before I said I do. I'll love her until I stop breathing. And that love will be the death of us both. Zainab looked up, tears streaming down her face. Minsu was still kneeling amid the scattered photographs, his head bowed like a man awaiting execution. "You love me," she whispered. His shoulders shook. "Yes. You've loved me this whole time." "Yes." "Then why?" "Because everyone I've ever loved dies, Zainab," his voice cracked. "And you deserve better than to be my next casualty." The journal fell from her hands. 4 years of distance. 4 years of cold courtesy. 4 years of sleeping in the same bed while oceans stretched between them. Not because he didn't want her, because he wanted her too much. "Minsu," she breathed. He finally looked up at her, and the raw devastation in his eyes stole her breath. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." Outside, Seoul glittered on. Inside, everything they'd carefully constructed came crashing down. Minsu's hands were still full of photographs when he started speaking. His voice came out hollow, like something had been scraped out of him and left only echoes behind. Her name was Yuna. Zainab's breath caught. She sank down onto the carpet across from him, the journal still clutched in her lap, watching this untouchable man finally break open. We grew up together, same neighborhood, same schools. She knew what I was becoming, what my family did, and she loved me anyway. His thumb traced the edge of one of the photographs unconsciously. I was 23 when I told her I wanted to marry her. She said yes. We kept it secret. I thought I was being careful, thought I could protect her by keeping her hidden until I was powerful enough that no one would dare touch her. His jaw clenched so hard Zainab could see the muscle jump. The Kim syndicate found out. They were our biggest rivals back then, hungry to take what my family had built. They saw an opportunity. He stopped, breathed, started again. They took her from her apartment, sent me photographs, told me if I wanted her back, I'd have to surrender territory, weapons, routes, half our operations. Zainab pressed her hand against her mouth. I gave them everything. The words came faster now, like poison he needed to purge. Everything they asked for. I begged, promised more. I would have burned my entire empire to the ground for her. His eyes lifted to Zainab's, and they were drowning. They killed her anyway, left her body where I'd find it. A message, a warning. Love makes you weak, and weak men die in our world. Minso, I burned them all. His voice dropped to something inhuman. The Kims, every last one. I hunted them down over 3 months and erased their entire bloodline from existence. My father said I went mad. Maybe I did. But when it was over, when I was standing in the ashes of everything I'd destroyed, I made myself a promise. He looked down at the photographs in his hands. Never again. Never let anyone get close enough to be used against me. Never love anyone enough to make them a target. Then why did you marry me? Zainab whispered. Because I'm a fool. The laugh that escaped him was bitter and broken. Because you walked into a charity gala 2 years after Yuna's death, and I couldn't breathe. Because you smiled at me like I was just a man, not a monster. Because you made me feel human again, and I was selfish enough to want you near me, even though I knew better. He set the photographs down carefully, his hands shaking. I thought I could do it differently this time. Marry you, give you my name, my protection, but keep my heart locked away. If I didn't love you, if everyone believed I didn't love you, then you'd be safe. You'd be just another business arrangement. A wife in name only. Untouchable because you meant nothing to me. But I did mean something, Zainab said softly. You meant everything. His voice cracked. From the first day, I failed before I even started. Every night I watched you sleep and memorized your face like it might be the last time. Every morning I left before you woke up because if I stayed, I'd reach for you. If I touched you once, I'd never stop. And the moment I showed weakness, the moment my enemies saw what you really meant to me, they'd come for you the way they came for Yuna. Tears streamed down Zainab's face. So you loved me by pretending not to. I loved you by trying to keep you alive. He dragged a hand through his hair, destroying its perfect order. I told myself the loneliness was worth it, that your hatred was a small price to pay for your safety, that I could live with you thinking I was cold and indifferent as long as you kept breathing. That's not love, Minsu. That's a prison. I know. The words came out ragged. I know. I built you a cage made of diamonds and distance and called it protection. I turned our marriage into a tomb because I was too terrified to let it be real. I'm a coward, Zainab. I've killed men with my bare hands, but I couldn't face the possibility of losing you the way I lost her. Zainab reached across the scattered photographs and took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. I'm not Yuna, she said firmly. And you're not that 23-year-old boy anymore. You're Park Min-soo, the most powerful man in Seoul, and you don't get to make my choices for me. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. You're asking me to believe that loving you is a death sentence. But Min-soo, living without you has already killed me. Every single day for 4 years. His composure finally shattered completely. He pulled her against his chest, his arms crushing her close, his face buried in her hair. His whole body shook with silent, devastating grief. I can't lose you, he whispered against her skin. I can't. Then stop pushing me away. For the first time in 4 years, Zainab felt her husband hold her like she was real. The alarm tore through the moment like a chainsaw through silk. Zainab jerked back from Min-soo's embrace, her heart lurching. The sound was monstrous, a shrieking, pulsing wail that came from everywhere at once. She'd never heard it before, hadn't even known the penthouse had an alarm system. Minsu's transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. 1 second he was broken and vulnerable, tears still wet on his face. The next, every trace of softness vanished. His eyes went flat and cold, his body coiling with lethal intent. He was on his feet before Zainab could process the movement, pulling her up with an iron grip on her wrist. "Stay behind me," he commanded, not her husband's voice. The voice of a man who'd built an empire on violence. "What's happening?" The first gunshot answered her question. It punched through the bedroom wall with a deafening crack, exploding plaster and paint in a spray of white dust. Zainab's scream died in her throat as Minsu threw himself over her, his body a shield as he drove them both to the floor. His weight crushed the air from her lungs. More gunfire erupted, rapid, professional, coming from multiple directions at once. "Crawl." Minsu's mouth was against her ear, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. "Behind the bed. Now." They moved together, his body covering hers as bullets tore through the walls like paper. Glass shattered. The television screen exploded in a shower of sparks. Zainab's hands found carpet, then hardwood, scrambling for purchase as Minsu propelled them behind the massive bed frame. He yanked open a hidden panel in the floor she'd never known existed, pulling out a matte black handgun with practiced efficiency. The weapon looked like an extension of his hand as he checked the magazine, chambered around, his movements smooth and mechanical. "How many?" A voice crackled from somewhere, his phone, still in his pocket. Minsu pulled it out, glancing at the screen. Security feed. Zainab caught glimpses of men in tactical gear flooding through the penthouse entrance, moving with military precision. "At least 12. His voice was ice, dragon's claw markings on their gear. "The triads?" The voice on the phone sounded terrified. "Sir, we need to evacuate. Lock down the building. No one else gets up here." Minsu's eyes found Zainab's, and for just a second, she saw the fear beneath the predator. "And call Jay. Tell him to bring everyone." More gunfire. Closer now. Heavy footsteps in the hallway outside their bedroom. Minsu's hand cupped Zainab's face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Listen to me very carefully. Everything I've done, every moment of distance, was to prevent exactly this. They found you anyway. They always do. Minsu, I need you to trust me now. Can you do that?" Zainab nodded, her whole body trembling. "Good." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, hard and desperate. Then he was moving, rising from behind the bed with the gun raised, his body positioned between her and the door. The bedroom door exploded inward. 3 men in black tactical gear poured through, weapons raised. Minsu fired twice before they'd fully entered. 2 bodies dropped, the third dove behind the dresser, returning fire. Wood splintered, a mirror shattered. Minsu moved like death itself, fast and efficient. Another shot, another body, but more were coming. Zainab could hear them, boots on marble, shouted commands in Mandarin, the metallic click of weapons being readied. Minsu retreated back behind the bed, his jaw set, his eyes calculating odds that clearly weren't good. "They're not here for me," he said quietly, reloading with swift, practiced movements. "They're here for you." The words hit Zainab like a physical blow. 4 years of watching, Minsu continued, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. 4 years of waiting for me to show weakness. And tonight, when I finally held you like you were mine, they saw it. They know now. They know what you mean to me. His prophecy had come true, and they were out of time. Minsu's hand locked around Zainab's wrist like a manacle. He hauled her up, moving with brutal efficiency toward the walk-in closet. Behind them, more footsteps thundered down the hallway. Voices shouting coordinates, the systematic clearing of rooms. "There's nothing in there," Zainab started. Minsu slammed his palm against a section of the back wall. It clicked, then swung inward with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a steel-lined corridor bathed in emergency lighting. A panic room. Of course he had a panic room. He shoved her inside. The door sealed behind them with a sound like a tomb closing. The sudden silence was deafening, no gunfire, no alarms, just the hum of ventilation and the frantic hammer of Zainab's heartbeat. The space was larger than she'd expected. Clinical. Banks of surveillance monitors covered one wall, showing feeds from throughout the penthouse, weapons lockers, communication equipment, supplies, everything needed to survive a siege. Minsu was already at the monitors, his fingers flying across keyboards. The screens flickered to life, showing men in tactical gear systematically searching every room. Professional, thorough, she counted 15, maybe more. They're not just attacking, Minsu said, his voice tight. They're hunting. One monitor showed the living room. 2 men stood examining framed photographs on the mantel. Photographs of her. Another screen showed them in the study, rifling through papers, looking for something, looking for information about her. The dragon's claw don't do random hits, Minsu continued, pulling up additional feeds. This was planned, coordinated, his jaw clenched. They've been watching us, mapping the penthouse, waiting. For what? For me to give them a reason. He turned to face her, and the devastation in his eyes was absolute. I held you tonight, Zainab. For the first time in 4 years, I held you like you were mine. And they were watching. Always watching. On one monitor, a man spoke into a radio. Subtitles appeared on the screen, Minsu's security system translating Mandarin to Korean. Target is female. Tanzanian. 20s. Priority 1, take her alive. Kill anyone who interferes. The words hung in the sterile air like poison. Minsu moved to a secondary panel, fingers stabbing at controls. A section of the far wall slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. Emergency tunnel. Goes down to the underground garage. There's a car waiting, always fueled, keys in the ignition. GPS tracker will guide you to a safe house in Busan. What are you talking about? You're leaving. He grabbed a go bag from a storage locker, thrust it into her hands. Right now. I'm not going anywhere without you. Zainab. No. She dropped the bag. You don't get to do this again. You don't get to push me away to keep me safe. They will torture you to get to me. His voice cracked. They will hurt you in ways I can't. He stopped, breathing hard. I've seen what the dragon's claw does to their victims. I won't let that happen to you. Then come with me. I can't. He gestured at the monitors. If I run, they'll chase us both. If I stay and fight, you have a chance to disappear. A chance. The word tasted bitter. You want me to run while you face 15 trained killers alone. I've faced worse. Not while I stood by and watched you die. The words echoed in the steel chamber. On the monitors, the men were converging on the bedroom. 30 seconds, maybe less, until they found the panic room entrance. Minsu's hands cupped her face, his touch desperate. I have spent 4 years keeping you alive by keeping you distant. I won't waste that sacrifice now. Please, Zainab. Please go. She looked into his slate-gray eyes and saw her answer reflected there. Fear, love, the absolute certainty that he was going to die tonight trying to buy her time. Your distance failed, Minsu. Her voice was steel. They found me anyway. So if you think I'm going to run now and spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved you, you don't know me at all. His expression shattered. You'll die. Then I'll die as your wife. She grabbed the gun from his holster before he could stop her. Not as your prisoner. On the monitors, the men reached the closet. Decision time. For 3 seconds, Minsu stared at the gun in Zainab's hands. At her face, set with a determination he'd never seen before. At the woman he'd spent 4 years trying to keep safe by keeping her small. She wasn't small anymore. You don't know how to use that, he said quietly. Then teach me. Her finger found the safety, clicked it off. Right now. Teach me. Or watch me figure it out on my own. Something broke in him. Something that had been holding together by sheer force of will for 4 years finally gave way. His shoulders dropped, his head bowed, and when he looked up again, his eyes were burning. Stance. His voice was rough, feet shoulder-width apart, dominant foot back, both hands on the grip. Zainab adjusted, mimicking his position. Aim center mass. 2 shots. Always. Never one. He moved behind her, his hands covering hers on the weapon, correcting her grip. Breathe out when you fire. Don't anticipate the recoil. On the monitors, the men were examining the closet wall. One knocked on panels, listening. They're going to find the entrance, Minsu said against her ear. When they do, it's going to be fast and brutal. They'll use flashbangs, maybe gas. They want you alive, which means they'll try not to kill you. Me. They'll put down immediately. Not if I shoot them first. His laugh was broken and beautiful. Not if you shoot them first, he echoed. Then his arms came around her from behind, crushing her against his chest, the gun pressed between them. I've been so afraid, so terrified of losing you that I never let myself have you. 4 years of loving you from a distance, 4 years of torture. And now that I've finally held you, I'm supposed to let you go? You're not letting me go, Zainab said fiercely. I'm staying, and we're fighting. Together. Together. He turned her in his arms, the gun careful between them, his forehead pressed against hers. If we do this, if we fight together, there's no going back. They'll know what you mean to me. Every enemy I've ever made will come for you. Your life will never be safe again. My life was never safe, Minsu. You just pretended it was. The truth of it hit him like a bullet. She saw it in his eyes. 4 years of protection had been 4 years of delusion. The danger had been there all along. The only thing his distance had accomplished was making them both miserable. I love you, he said, the words raw and desperate. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. Every breath you take, every moment you exist in this world, I'm afraid it's the last. But losing you to fear, pushing you away to keep you safe, that's just another way of losing you, isn't it? Yes. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, it is. Then no more distance. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. No more pretending. No more trying to protect you by keeping you in the dark. You want to be my partner? My equal? I want to be your wife, Zainab said. Your real wife, in every way that matters. Then you are. He kissed her, hard and desperate and fierce. My wife, my partner, my heart. Whatever happens next, we face it together. On the monitor, one of the men found the seam in the wall. They're coming, Minsu said, pulling back. He moved to the weapons locker, pulling out a tactical vest, strapping it onto Zainab with swift, efficient movements. His hands were steady now, purposeful. Stay behind cover. Don't be a hero. When I say move, you move. When I say shoot, you empty the magazine. And when this is over, he looked at her, and for the first time in 4 years, she saw him completely. No walls, no distance, just the man she'd married, finally letting her in. When this is over, he said, I'm taking you to bed and not letting you leave for a week. Zainab laughed, despite everything. Despite the death waiting on the other side of the steel door. Promise? Promise. He took her hand, squeezed it once. Ready? The panel behind them started to hiss, unsealing. Ready, Zainab said, and meant it. They turned to face the door together. The door exploded inward with a deafening crack. Flashbang. Minsu shoved Zainab behind a steel support column as white light and concussive force tore through the panic room. Her ears rang, her vision blurred, but her fingers stayed on the trigger, just as he'd taught her. 3 men poured through the smoke. Minsu fired twice, 2 dropped. The third dove left, and Zainab didn't think she just aimed center mass and squeezed. 2 shots. The recoil kicked through her arms. The man stumbled, fell. Move! Minsu's hand found hers, dragging her through a secondary exit she hadn't noticed. They burst into a service corridor, emergency lighting casting everything in blood-red shadows. Behind them, more footsteps, more shouting. They moved through the penthouse like ghosts. Minsu knew every angle, every shadow, every piece of cover. Zainab stayed on his 6, her heart a war drum in her chest, the gun heavy and hot in her hands. They rounded a corner. 2 men. Minsu took one. Zainab fired at the second, her shots going wide. The man swung his rifle toward her. Minsu's blade found his throat first. You're doing good, he said, reloading with mechanical precision. Stay with me. They fought room by room, a brutal dance of violence and survival. Minsu was terrifying, efficient, and lethal, every movement calculated. But Zainab held her ground, learning with each engagement. Breathe, aim, fire, move. The building shuddered. Backup arriving, Minsu's men, finally breaching the lower levels. The tide was turning. They reached the living room. 4 men waiting, too many. Minsu pulled Zainab down behind the overturned sofa as bullets shredded upholstery. His magazine clicked empty. He reached for his spare, and that's when Zainab saw it, the 5th man, emerging from the kitchen, rifle raised, aimed at Minsu's exposed back. She didn't hesitate. 3 shots. The first missed. The second caught him in the shoulder, spinning him. The third hit center mass, and he went down. Minsu turned, saw the body, saw her smoking gun. Their eyes met across the ruined living room, and something fundamental shifted between them. Recognition, respect, equals. Nice shot, he said, and the pride in his voice made her heart soar despite the chaos. His men flooded in a dozen armed soldiers in tactical gear, securing the penthouse with ruthless efficiency. The remaining Dragon's Claw members were subdued, executed, or fleeing. It was over in minutes. Minsu stood, pulling Zainab up with him. They were covered in plaster dust and cordite residue, his suit destroyed, her pajamas torn. He cupped her face, checking her for injuries with shaking hands. "You saved my life," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I told you," Zainab replied, pressing her forehead to his. "Partners." Jay appeared, Minsu's second in command, surveying the carnage with grim satisfaction. "The Dragon's Claw leadership is requesting negotiation. They say this was unauthorized, a rogue cell." "Tell them negotiation time is over," Minsu said, his arm steel around Zainab's waist. "They came for my wife. I'm coming for their empire." Jay's eyes widened slightly, glancing between them. "Your wife. Sir, if we acknowledge, everyone will know what she means to me." Minsu looked down at Zainab, and she saw the decision in his eyes. The final wall coming down. "Good. Let them all know. Let every enemy understand. Touch her, and I burn the world." Zainab smiled, fierce and wild. "Together, together," he echoed, and kissed her there amid the ruins and the blood, sealing their partnership in fire. Dawn broke over Seoul in shades of gold and amber as they returned to the bedroom. The penthouse was quiet now, Minsu's men having removed the bodies and secured the perimeter, but the scars remained bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, the faint smell of cordite and destruction. Zainab stood at the window, watching the city wake. Behind her, she heard Minsu moving, the rustle of his ruined jacket being discarded. When his arms came around her waist, she leaned back into his chest, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion, the terror, the overwhelming relief of being alive. "I was so afraid," he whispered against her hair. "When that man aimed at you, when I saw you in the line of fire, I understood. I finally understood why I kept you distant. Because losing you would end me, Zainab. Not just hurt me, end me completely." She turned in his arms, her hands finding his face. There was blood on his collar, a cut above his eyebrow, bruises forming along his jaw. He'd never looked more human, more real. "But you didn't lose me," she said softly. "I'm right here." "You are." His thumb traced her lower lip. "And I'm done being afraid of that." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the desperate, violent kiss in the panic room. This was slow, reverent, a man touching something sacred he'd denied himself for far too long. Zainab's hands slid into his hair, pulling him closer, and he groaned against her mouth. "Zainab," he breathed. "I need—" "Yes," she answered before he could finish. "Yes to everything." They moved to the bed, the same bed where they'd slept apart for 1,460 nights. But tonight was different. Tonight, Minsu's hands trembled as they traced her body, learning her with a hunger that made her breath catch. Tonight, she finally understood what it meant to be touched by someone who loved her with terrifying completeness. The crimson silk pajamas fell away, the distance evaporated, and for the first time in 4 years, they became husband and wife in every way that mattered. Later, as dawn fully claimed the sky, Zainab lay in Minsu's arms, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. She'd never felt so complete, so whole. Her eyes found the suitcase, still lying open at the foot of the bed, half packed with its collection of empty gestures. "Burn it," she said. Minsu's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "The suitcase? Everything. The gifts, the distance, all of it." She looked up at him. "I don't want reminders of what we were, only what we are now." He kissed her forehead, lingering there. "And what are we now?" "Unbreakable," Zainab said. "Dangerous. Together." "Together," he echoed, the word a promise. She closed her eyes, finally allowing sleep to take her. For the first time in 4 years, she fell asleep in her husband's arms. And for the first time in 4 years, Park Min-soo held his wife through the night. His partner, his equal, his heart. The distance was gone, and they would never go back. If Zainab and Min-soo's story left you breathless, you're in the right place. This is just one of the intense, addictive romance stories waiting for you on my channel. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next story that will consume your thoughts for days. Comment below. Which moment destroyed you? Was it the journal, the panic room confession, or when Zainab saved his life? Share this story with someone who needs a new obsession. Trust me, they'll thank you later. Your next addiction is just one click away. Subscribe now.